And good morning, my beautiful America. Welcome back to the All-American Book Club. Boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special treat for you. For all of those in the DMV area, you know the name Carrie Sheffield. Well, we have the honor to bring her over to the show this morning and her brand new book, Motorhome Prophecies, A Journey of Healing and Forgiveness. You guys all know from the DC, especially the DC circuit of news media, you've seen her in just about every different news entity. But I want to share more of a personal journey about Carrie this morning with you guys. She grew up fifth out of 8 children with a violent and mentally ill street musician father who believed he was a modern day Mormon prophet destined to become the US president someday. She attended 17 public schools and homeschool, all while performing classical music on the streets and passing out fire and brimstone religious pamphlets at times while child custody workers loomed. Okay, her story is unbelievable, and I cannot wait for you guys to meet Carrie. Carrie, thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Eden. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So for those on the YouTube channel, I'm holding up the beautiful book. I see it behind you as well, but I want them to see, yep, there it is. There it is. And like we talked about before we started the interview, I want to kind of jump in. I looked through your chapters and I saw the peace of Christ as chapter 14. And it talks about Ezekiel 36:26. A new heart I will give you, and a new spirit I will put within you. I will remove from your body the heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. You talked about your conversion to Christianity after what I just read happened because of 2 powerful forces, Donald Trump and science. Okay, sister, help me break this down.
Yeah, 2 powerful forces. And the backdrop of that, as you mentioned, I grew up in this very cult-like environment. By the time I was 18, I had, my family, when I was in high school, we were living in a shed in the Ozarks with no running water and no furnace. My brother had been born in a tent when the family was homeless, living in a tent. When I was 17, one of my 2 schizophrenic brothers, the other one developed schizophrenia later, but the older of the 2, he groped me and tried to rape me. And so here I am, 18, and I'm living in a motorhome with 10 people, including a 200-pound man who wants to rape me. That is my brother. And this is hell on earth. And so I eventually told my dad, I want to leave. I want to go to college. I'm number 5 in the birth order, but I have 4 older brothers who were still at home. And so I was the first to leave. And my father raised his right hand, like making an oath. And he said, I prophesy in the name of Jesus, you'll be raped and murdered if you leave. And which is a very cult-like thing to say. And it's very religiously abusive to use the name of Jesus to pronounce curses, given that Jesus is the God he's the way, the truth, and the life. And so eventually, long story, I broke away. I was declared legally estranged. My father said my blood changed. I was no longer his daughter, was not allowed home all through college for Christmas breaks or summer breaks or anything like that. And so that's the backdrop of me spending 12 years as a very bitter and angry agnostic, because I'd seen a lot of evil done in the name of God and in the name of Christ, just like other people see, whether it's pedophilia in the Catholic Church or a Protestant televangelist stealing money or abusing women in his congregation. We see this across the board. And it can be so easy to confuse God with people who abuse God's name. And so I was in that space for about 12 years. And then here comes these 2 powerful forces that changed that course of history for me. My burning bush moments, if you will. And so to start with Donald Trump, I said it was Donald Trump and science, the 2 forces. Donald Trump, I say that now, I am a Trump supporter, I'm a Trump voter, but it was not always that way. I'm a recovered never Trumper. And at the time when I was a never Trumper, I was not a believer also. And I realized how I had been living my life as an agnostic. Agnostic, I describe it as a cosmic fence sitter. So an atheist is completely, there is no God. A believer says there is. Agnostic just says, I don't know. I call it a cosmic shoulder shrugger. I don't know. don't care if there is one. He's probably a jerk and he hates me and I hate him back, but I don't know. And but I had filled the void. You know, they say that God shaped hole in our hearts with all these false gods. And there's a great book that really summarizes and distills this human impulse. It's called Counterfeit Gods by Tim
Yes.
Keller.
Yes, my pastor in New York.
Oh,
Yep.
likewise, yes. Now he
Yes.
was he was just a gem.
Yeah.
But his book Counterfeit Gods, each chapter is a false god that we worship, and they're good, but they're gifts instead of the giver of the gifts. And so I kept trying them and they kept failing me. I tried my career and there was a round of layoffs and I got laid off. I was, you know, caught up in that. And it was just like my God had rejected me. And so I became suicidal because it was all that I had at that point. I didn't have God, I didn't have family. My career became my idol. And then I got laid off. And it was just this existential crisis. And thankfully, I was able to claw my way out of that, but I moved on to the next false idol, which was marriage and dating and relationships.
Yeah.
Ended up getting engaged to an emotionally abusive person, and had a series of dating men who were very either substance abusing or cheating or emotionally abusive, gaslighting. Like, you know, I'm a broken person. They say with women who are abused, there's an interesting phrase that kind of encapsulates it, which is that broken men, they know who to love, but not how to love. And broken women know how to love, but not who to love. And I found that over and over, where I would just be so loving and giving to men and just have them continue to hurt me the way that my mother had done with my father. And I repeated that generational curse.
Yeah.
And so it just got so bad that I ended up breaking off the engagement, and became suicidal again. And so it's just another false idol, you know. And so then I moved on to an idol which I thought would not fail me, and that was the God of public service and politics.
Yeah.
Laughing now, this was
I know.
before 2016. It was a simpler time.
Exactly.
But I had ended up getting a master's in public policy from Harvard, got a journalism scholarship to study there with, you know, because otherwise I could not have afforded it. But I had, you know, full tuition covered, and so that was a blessing. But I could talk later on a side note about what's happening at Harvard right now. But
Yeah, we get.
but at the time I was very excited and proud of it. And in any case, I went to the Harvard Kennedy School, which is named after
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and I think in some ways I had put Kennedy as almost like a Messiah type figure. He was
Yeah.
assassinated for his people, just like Martin Luther King Jr. was, just like Abraham Lincoln was, who was shot on Good Friday. Very symbolic. And that became my religion. It became my politics. I think this happens more commonly on the left, where the secular left, that becomes their religion. I described myself as a secular conservative. That was my modus operandi. And so I was happy as a clam. I started to go on national TV shows and was, you know, going on the Bill Maher show and Fox
Yeah.
and CNN and debating, and was really excited. And then Donald Trump happened. And I was this did not compute. My circuitry just overheated, and I realized that I was worshiping religion, or I was worshiping politics.
Yeah.
And I just said about Trump, I'm just like, I can't worship this guy. I can't. He had donated to Democrats, like the locker room talk. I mean, he didn't fit the mold. He had no conservative track record to follow upon or to speak upon. And so I was so skeptical, but it was this existential moment for me, because I had been building my whole life to work on a presidential campaign, or just to have, you know, the euphoria of a religious experience within politics. And so that bubble was popped. And so I actually credit Donald Trump with me going back to church, because I realized I needed something bigger than politics.
Yeah.
I will say that now that void has been filled, I'm now a big Trump supporter. And the reason why is because I don't expect my religion or my relationship to God to be filled by politics. And I've got a much healthier separation. of that. And the way I've heard it described when I was going through my confirmation class was divine order is God, people, things.
Yeah.
And when I was agnostic, I was living the order of people, things indifferent to God.
Yes.
And that is a very disordered way of life, and that's a disordered way of society. And unfortunately, in our materialistic society, quite often we actually put things first and then people and then indifferent to God. But sometimes, you know, either way, no matter my way or that way, it's disordered. Um, and once I had flipped it to the correct order,
Mhm.
politics, which is, you know, people,
Yeah.
I was able to see it with a healthier lens. And so I was able to see that my salvation is not dependent on who the Republican nominee is. And I can appreciate the courage and the boldness that Trump brings in an unprecedented way, because I don't expect him to be a prophet or a saint. I know that it's really more driven by the policies, and I don't make a religion out of policy.
Yeah.
So that's the Trump aspect. And then meanwhile, the other force that I mentioned is science.
Right.
And science it's so interesting. I hear some on the secular left try to attack Christians and say they're anti-science, which is to me just absurd because the scientific method was created by a Christian. Isaac Newton was a Christian.
Yes.
Some of
Yes.
the brightest Christian minds were scientifically oriented and brought us amazing discoveries. And whether you're a Christian or just believing in God in general, like Einstein talked about how science and math explain the mind of God. So for anyone to claim a believer as anti-science, it's just not, it's just
Yes.
silly. Um,
Yes.
because science is a way to explain how the world works in a mathematical terms, just like Martin Luther King Jr. would talk about the moral laws of the universe.
Yes.
Got the physical laws of the universe and the moral laws of the universe. They're still laws, and it's a divine order. And again, God is God of order. That's why Jordan Peterson is so brilliant, because he talks about order. And so to be afraid of the laws of order, it's just nonsensical to claim that for anyone who's, you know, Christian. But I had never really studied metaphysics as an agnostic. And so I mentioned in the book, part of my conversion process was I had been hosting a talk show at the time with Clay Aiken, the American Idol singer, who's from North Carolina. And it was a left-right talk show. He's a Democrat. He had run for Congress. He likes to joke he's America's #1, #2, because he came in second on Idol, second on Celebrity Apprentice. So he knows the Trump family from Celebrity Apprentice. And then he ran for Congress, and he was the Democratic nominee in his home district in North Carolina, and he came in second to the Republicans. So
I remember that.
yeah. So in any case, he moved to New York. We were hosting this show, and the publicist for Deepak Chopra reached out and said, "Do you want Deepak on your show?" And I said, "Of course, would love to meet him." And the price of admission was to talk about his book. And his book was called You Are the Universe. And that book really opened my mind about science. And so folks know, if you don't know already, Deepak Chopra, he is Western trained in medicine. He is an MD. He's also on the board of the Catholic Church's AI policy. So he's very, he understands Christianity. He's
Yeah.
Christian. He thinks I went too far when I became Christian. I'm like, Deepak, let's pull you in. But
Yeah. Yeah, let's do that.
yeah, but I was coming from a deep place of anger and hostility. So to get a hold of that book was a really good middle ground for me before I became Christian. But the book, he had also co-authored it with a Greek guy named Kalafatos, who has a PhD in physics from MIT, which is pretty much the most
Yeah, it is. Yes.
it's the most authoritative science school in the world is MIT.
Exactly.
And
Yes.
you've got a guy who has a PhD in physics writing with Deepak Chopra this book about metaphysics, and it's about how science and faith are perfectly aligned.
Yeah.
And it also knocks down very systematically a lot of the objections to claims about God. And also it talks about probabilities and how you know, sometimes the phrase is used as the intelligent design or
Yes. Yes.
you know, just the fine-tuned theory of the universe. So the fine-tuned theory of the universe is basically looking at the probability of Earth being at this velocity, at this temperature, in this very narrow band of temperatures, such that we don't melt, we don't explode, our heads don't explode.
Yeah.
That is infinitesimally small. You basically have to take like almost infinite 0.0000, infinite zeros, nearly infinite zeros, 0.1
Yeah.
probability that it just happened by chance. And
Right.
the universe
Right.
is billions of years old. And so it's just, some people say, well, it's, if you have enough universes, it's called the multiverse theory, then you'll get our universe that happened to create this way. And so it's just playing the Russian roulette probability game. Well, the problem with that is, number one, there's no evidence for multiverse theory. And number two, there's another law of physics called just the law of simplicity, or that the simplest explanation must be true. And this violates that law, that you have a multiverse. And so it just is the simplest explanation, Occam's razor, as they call it, must be true. And to have a creator really is the simplest solution. And so I read all of this, and I was just like, wow, this is, and in the book, I think I compare it to the probability of Earth being this way to the probability of a tornado going through a junkyard and randomly assorting a finely
Right.
tuned nuclear weapon system. Just
Right.
chance. Very, very, very unlikely.
As I was reading through your book and studying your social, and just knowing being in the political spectrum for so long and knowing the Carrie Sheffield, but seeing this other side to what you went through and how you've come out on the other side and how God has transformed you. And I remember messaging you a couple Sundays ago, your Instagram account, just saying privately, you are such a beautiful soul of God. And it's so neat to see how he has completely just transformed you. And you have put him first, and you can see how you have put him first. And I hope I'm not like going to make you cry. I'm not trying to. But I'm just blown away to see the transformation. And that's what God does. That's what I love about our God. There's no other gods like him. He is able to take us and all of our garbage and transform us into beautiful people. We are whiter than snow as he sees us. And I just love that you have been able to go through this journey and him bring you out on the other side. We have 2 minutes left, and I have one other question for you, and it talks about the forgiveness and what you did as you were on this journey and your relationship with your father. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, well, just so folks know, I say in the book, I am at best an anti-hero. And the book, yeah, like I had one reader say, I think on Goodreads or somewhere, just like, gosh, she's stupid. Why does she make so many dumb mistakes? And it's like, in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. And just since we don't have much time, I think I'll try to distill the forgiveness story with a song that I'm wanting to write. I
Yeah.
have kind of the verses planned out in my head.
Yeah.
And it is based on the verse in the Bible where Jesus says, "Who among you, if your son asked for bread, you would give a stone, and if he asked for fish, you
Yes.
would give a serpent?" Well, my father gave me stones and serpents. And so that's what the first verse is, my father gave me stones and serpents. The second verse is, I went out to the serpent store and the stone store and bought my own. And that's the self-sabotage that
Yeah.
so often happens in intergenerational curses, where you
Yes.
have the child of an alcoholic becomes an alcoholic or marries an alcoholic. The child of an abuser becomes an abuser or is abused. That is the
Yeah.
self-sabotage, the second generation. And the
Yes.
third verse is, Jesus gave me the bread of life. He helped me to
Yes.
drop the stones. He helped me to drop the serpents. And it was only through my walk with Christ that I was able to forgive him. I have a forgiveness mentor who I talk about in the book. His name is Anthony Thompson. He's a
Mhm.
pastor in Charleston, South Carolina. Y'all should look him up. He's phenomenal. He has a great book. The title is Called to Forgive. His wife was murdered by a white supremacist in a Black church in Charleston, South Carolina. And I learned from his example, and he became a mentor. If he could forgive the murderer, I could forgive my father. And through Christ's help, I did.
Amen, sister. On that final note, we have 10 seconds left. Where can my amazing audience and YouTube followers as well find you? Obviously, you can get the book on Amazon, and we're going to be promoting it on the summer read list, but best way to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. On my LinkedIn or on my Twitter, I've got my link tree that has all my links.
Yes.
And carriesheffield.com. It's Carrie. Carrie Sheffield. For people who like baseball, it's like Gary Sheffield, but Carrie. So easy to remember, especially for you males out there, men who like baseball.
Carrie Sheffield, what a blessing to have you here. I am so honored to know you and have you be a part of the All American Book Club. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eden. God bless.
And for all of those who are tuning in, stay tuned. We'll be right back for our next segment.